Today I'm out in the shop doing some maintenance on my 1554 SLT Cub Cadet lawn tractor, and I want to show you a modification that I saw on the internet. Now that's a modification for my prop rod that I did. Be sure to check out that video because my two struts haven't worked properly since the tractor was about 2 years old. But this modification has to do with the front spindle. In fact, some do-it-yourselfers on the internet have boasted that this is like adding power steering to your lawn tractor, which reminds me of something my dad used to say. My dad was a old farm boy from Minnesota and was used to the older tractors that didn't have power steering. He used to say that you need to eat more mashed potatoes to have power steering. Well, I learned that as a young man when I was driving the Deuce and a Half Army truck. It doesn't have power steering either. You in fact do need to eat more mashed potatoes so you have power steering when operating that truck. My mower isn't that hard to turn. It's not that hard to steer. However, since I saw the video on the internet and a lot of my commenters are asking for more lawn tractor videos, I thought I would do this modification for you and walk you through the modification design process. So before we get started, at Stiles Automotive, I do general automotive work, modifications, and tips. If you find this video helpful, consider subscribing and watching the other videos. Now this video has to do with a modification here to the spindle. These spindles on my Cub Cadet SLT 1554 lawn tractor, and they're the same, I believe, on all the 1000 series and 1500 series Cub Cadet lawn tractors. These spindles are 3/4 inch diameter spindles. So this whole mechanism that goes all the way in here is just a rod that comes up here that's threaded, and that's a 15/16 nut. This modification has to do with putting a thrust washer underneath the I-beam here on the spindle. So these thrust washers, made in China, are fairly inexpensive on the internet, and these are rated for 500 pounds or more. They come with the bearing and 2 washers. There's actually 10 sets here. So that's the needle thrust bearing, the washer on top and bottom, and that's supposed to take the load then here underneath this bracket on the spindle. So these tires on the front of my Cub Cadet are rated at about 500 pounds each. The overall weight on my Cub Cadet lawn tractor is 529 pounds for this SLT 1554 tractor. That's 529 pounds or 240 kilograms. And I haven't measured how much weight is on the front tire of the tractor, and I can't anticipate what the dynamic loads, if you hit something with your tire or whatnot, but I don't really know the load capacity of my thrust washers anyway. So from the Amazon page, of course, made in China, the Amazon page states that this industrial bearing has nice load carrying capacity, and of course it's got wide applications, so if it's used on trains and bikes, certainly it can be used on my lawn tractor. Anyway, so you take from an engineering standpoint, nice load carrying capacity. If you put a safety factor on nice and you take 10% off that, what is that? So anyway, that's as much design thought that I've put into these bearings. And if you look at some of the other videos that are on the internet, they've put about that much thought into it also. And I haven't heard anybody complain when they put thrust washers in their spindles. So with my Cub Cadet tractor, I think there's plenty of clearance. So my tractor has threads here, and the rule is you're supposed to have 2 threads on the outside of a nut. That's the general rule of thumb. So I got a little bit of threads there, and also I can stick my fingernail in between my nut and the top of that I-beam. So I should have a little bit of room right there. I mean, worst case, if you're doing this modification, if you had to shorten that distance on your lawn tractor, that's possible. You could mill off or grind off a little bit of material off either the top or the bottom. And maybe you need to do it on the bottom to make it so it fits better. But at any rate, this lawn tractor has 20 years on it, and it looks like there's a little bit of clearance in there already. So I'm going to take it apart and see if my 3/4 inch inside diameter thrust bearings will fit on here. Really what you want to do is go just a little bit larger. So, you know, a little larger than 3/4 would have been better, because this is a 3/4 inch spindle, but we'll see if these bearings fit on there. 15/16 head size nut, and I don't plan on taking my tie rod off, but I can easily take that off if I need to. Just go all the way to the stop. So yes, I was able to get the spindle out without taking that tie rod off. Just a little brake cleaner. Clean it up. And the moment of truth to see if my bearing will fit on here. The washer fit, and that looks pretty good. Let's give you just a little bit different angle here. You can see the thrust washer did fit in there. So that fit on there pretty nicely. This is a 3/4 inch inside diameter, 1.25 inch outside diameter thrust needle roller bearing with washers. That seems to fit on there very nicely. I'll put a link to the Amazon page for these in the video description. So that looks pretty good for the outside diameter of my I-beam also. Looks like it's going to fit there pretty well too. Just a little bit of red synthetic wheel bearing grease. Grease up the roller bearing, top and bottom. Push it into the rollers to pack it. I would anticipate, with the amount of grease that comes out of the bottom and out of the top around the nut, when I grease this fitting, that this grease will be forced into these. when I grease that in my periodic maintenance. So that's it. Just a slathering of grease and some back on the spindle. And a little on the washer. There we go. And spindle back in. And I did wash this lawn tractor before I brought it in, but I washed it in the backyard, so that tire got pretty dirty, bringing it around to the shop. Get the weight off it. A little bit of grass there. There we go. And I didn't see a torque spec in my Cub Cadet service manual for the 1500 series lawn tractors, but that's 3/4 inch diameter. If that was a bolt, it would be about 125 foot-pounds. I don't know what it took to get it off, but I'm not going to torque it. I'm just going to make it good and tight. So a little bit of German torque settings on it. So just good and tight. And it feels like it did have some play there. Let's jack it back up and see. Ah, that's tight. So that's one side, but I was not able to torque this nut down all the way in this configuration. So I don't know, I'm gonna have to do some trial and error and see if this nut is gonna come loose on me. I may have to do a cotter pin or something into the nut to make this work, or do something to make a little more clearance for that bearing. I'm going to go ahead and jack up the other side and do the other side, and then see how that goes. I time-lapse that, but it only took me about 5 minutes to do that. Quite simple to do that. Let me go back to my other view over here. Come back a little bit for you so you can see the front wheels. Now it does seem significantly easier. That tire could probably use a little air there on the right hand side, but it does seem significantly easier to turn the wheels. I think I'm going to drive it and come right back and let you know what I think. So that whole thing with 2 washers and the bearing was too thick, so I couldn't torque down onto the shoulder on the spindle here with my nut. So I took off the bottom washer, and then now I'm taking off the top washer because this washer will fit right on top of the I-beam. So it looks like it's about the right size. So I'm going to let the bearings ride right on the spindle and then on the bottom surface of the I-beam and see how that works. But I got this edge is just above the lip there, but my nut must be torquing down into that further than that, so there's a little bit of a shoulder in here. So I'm going to try that thickness. These washers are stainless steel and they're not very thick, but maybe taking both washers off will be enough. Let me try that. There we go. Let's torque that. That seems like it's letting me torque it down, and there's still some movement here. So let me go ahead and torque that nut down. Oh yeah, that's much better. Before, when I turned the steering wheel, the nut was loosening up, so you got to get it torqued down so it doesn't loosen. That seems much better. Re-torque it. That tire is going flat again on me. Yeah, I don't know if I showed that without torquing that nut down, it was already very loose. take both washers out, put just the bearing back. I think it'll ride on that where the bottom of that I-beam was riding before. And look how far above it is, that lip is now. If this side has more clearance, I should try putting one washer back in that. There we go. Okay, well that's it. The bearings without any washers seem to work, and I'm able to torque down my nuts, and so those should see if that keeps coming loose. Now if it does come loose, I could always take the bearings back out and go back to the stock OEM configuration. I really need a new tire on the left side of this tractor. It's dry rotted and cracked. Been trying to push these. Of course, you know, on a lawn tractor this old, it hasn't worn the tire down at all. It's just a matter of the dry rot and being an old tire. But back to the thrust bearings, that did help. I just did a quick test drive, and it does make a significant difference on the front of my tractor, especially when you're going slow. It definitely helps out for turning. It's not exactly like power steering, but for $12.99 for 10 bearings, so what is that, $1.20, $1.30 per bearing, that's well worth the effort, especially on the Cub Cadet tractors with that nut on the top. It's really easy to take off, really easy to get that spindle off. It only took me 5 minutes per side to do this, so I think it's well worth the effort. So now that concludes the video. If you found it helpful, let me know in the comments, and please subscribe. I look forward to your comments.